My name is Tori Barrett. I was 30 years old. The day 3 empty chairs finally explained my entire childhood. Interesting thing about abandonment. Sometimes it's reserved seating. Fort Moore graduation field. Bright Georgia sun. 300 recruits standing in perfect formation while families filled the bleachers behind us. Mothers crying. Kids waving signs. Veterans saluting during the anthem. And in Section F. Row 3. Seats 7, 8, and 9. My family never arrived. Interesting honestly. Because I mailed those seat numbers 6 weeks earlier. One for my father. One for my mother. One for my sister. 3 empty chairs. That was the moment everything finally became visible. But honestly? The chairs weren't the betrayal. They were just the proof. The real betrayal started years earlier. Small things first. Hand-me-down dresses. Used textbooks. Bus fare instead of a car. Interesting thing about family favoritism. It rarely looks dramatic while you're living inside it. It looks practical. Reasonable. Temporary. Until one day you realize the temporary treatment lasted your entire life. My father, Ray Barrett, was a plumber in Collinsville, Illinois. Made $62,000 a year. Owned his house outright. Washed his Ford F-150 every Sunday morning like it was a religious ceremony. Ray believed every dollar spent on his children was an investment. And investments needed returns. My mother Diane never disagreed with him publicly. Interesting honestly. Because some women don't surrender their opinions. They store them away for survival. Then there was Megan. My older sister. 3 years older. 3 times more protected. Megan got the new prom dress. I got hers hemmed smaller. Megan got $2,000 for her first car. I got bus schedules and advice about applying at Dairy Queen. When Megan moved into her first apartment, my parents paid the deposit. When I moved into mine, Dad said, "You're smart. You'll figure it out." Interesting sentence. Because families say that to strong children when they want permission not to help them. And honestly, I did figure it out. Every single time. 3 jobs through college. Warehouse mornings. Tutoring afternoons. Catering weekends. Southern Illinois University degree paid mostly by exhaustion and caffeine. Graduated with $11,000 in loans and exactly $0 from my parents. But Megan always needed more help. More support. More understanding. Interesting honestly. Because struggling children get rescued. Capable children get assigned responsibility. I enlisted in the Army at 28. People always asked why so late. Truth? Because I spent my 20s becoming the adult my parents never planned to help financially. Jake understood immediately. My husband had served 4 years already. He talked about the Army like it was the first place that ever taught him structure instead of survival. So I signed. Fort Moore. 10 weeks. 4:30 wake-ups. Georgia humidity. Gas chamber drills. Rifle qualifications. Blisters underneath both heels by week 2. Interesting thing about Army training. It strips excuses away faster than family systems do. Every Sunday we got 10 minutes for phone calls. 10 minutes. Measured like oxygen. I called home every week. Week 1. Mom asked about training for maybe 90 seconds before pivoting. Megan found a venue. $300 a plate. Week 3. Dad answered Mom's phone. "She's at cake tasting with your sister." 41-second call. I timed it afterward. Interesting honestly. Because people always make time for what emotionally matters to them. By week 5. I stopped calling Dad completely. No answer 3 Sundays in a row. Jake was the only person who consistently wrote me postcards. Photos of our dog Biscuit sitting on the porch. House still standing. Dog still fat. Proud of you. I carried that postcard in my cargo pocket for 5 weeks. Sergeant Reeves noticed eventually. Compact woman. Voice sharp enough to strip paint off a Humvee. One morning before formation she pulled me aside. Barrett. Family day next week. Pause. You got anyone coming? Interesting thing about drill sergeants. They recognize loneliness immediately because they see hundreds of versions of it every year. Yes, drill sergeant. I lied directly into her eyes. She held my gaze for 1 extra second. She knew. Of course she knew. Family day arrived before graduation. SUVs flooding the parking lots. Children carrying balloons. Parents dragging coolers across the grass. I watched from the barracks window pretending not to care. Sergeant Reeves found me 20 minutes later. Come with me. No explanation. Just command voice. She walked me across the parade field toward another recruit's family picnic. Lewis family. Huge cooler full of fried chicken. Veteran dad. Laughing mother. Little sister jumping on her brother's back. Mrs. Lewis, Sergeant Reeves said calmly. Specialist Barrett could use some company today. Interesting honestly. Because strangers sometimes recognize your pain faster than relatives do. Mrs. Lewis pulled me into a hug immediately. Smelled like cornbread and sunscreen. Well, sit down, baby. You hungry? I ate fried chicken with strangers while my mother tried on Mother of the Bride hats 4 hours away. I know because she posted photos in the family group chat that afternoon. Price tag still hanging from the brim. Graduation happened the next morning. Marching bands. Salutes. Certificates handed out beneath brutal Georgia sunlight. I crossed the stage. Shook the commander's hand. Looked toward Section F one final time. Still empty. Interesting honestly. Because some heartbreaks don't explode. They confirm things quietly you already suspected. After the ceremony? I checked my phone. One text from Mom. Sorry honey. Dad's helping Megan with venue deposits. We'll celebrate when you get home. Then the sentence that followed me for weeks afterward. You understand, right? Interesting thing about emotionally manipulative parents. They frame neglect like maturity tests. I understood perfectly. Jake picked me up at Lambert Airport 2 days later holding a handwritten sign. PFC Barrett. Huge grin. Tight hug. And honestly? That airport hug felt more like family than anything I'd experienced in years. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. 15 minutes across town. Mom answered in her bathrobe holding coffee. Surprised expression. Oh. Tori. When did you get back? Yesterday. Interesting honestly. Because people invested emotionally usually know your arrival dates already. Dad sat in the den watching Cardinals baseball. Looked up once. You lose weight, kid? Then turned back toward the television. No congratulations. No questions about training. No mention of the graduation they skipped. Nothing. Megan arrived 20 minutes later carrying a giant wedding binder. Gold script across the front. Barrett Cole wedding. She talked for 30 straight minutes about centerpieces, seating charts, and blush-colored bridesmaid dresses. Never once asked how basic training went. I sat there listening. And something inside me unlocked permanently. Not anger. Not sadness. Recognition. Because suddenly, I understood my role in the Barrett family completely. Not daughter. Backup plan, I discovered the garage situation 3 days later. Interesting thing about boundary violations. They usually begin disguised as convenience. Jake mentioned it casually at first. Your dad brought over some stuff while you were gone. Stuff. Interesting word. Because stuff sounds temporary. Reasonable. Harmless. Then I opened the garage door. And stopped walking. My father hadn't stored a few boxes. He had moved in. Fishing rods mounted directly into my drywall. Red Craftsman tool chest weighing at least 300 pounds. Mini fridge plugged into my outlet humming beside the workbench. Folding table. Tackle boxes. 2 cardboard boxes shoved against the far wall like permanent fixtures. Interesting honestly. Because entitlement always expands to fill whatever space you don't defend. Jake stood behind me quietly. He came by during week 3. Pause. Used the spare key. I stared at the wall anchors drilled into my garage drywall. Fresh screws. Fresh damage. Fresh reminder that my father never viewed other people's property as fully separate from himself. Interesting thing about controlling parents. They mistake access for ownership. I called Ray that evening. Kept my voice calm. Measured. Army calm. Dad. You moved a lot of your stuff into our garage. I had the key, didn't I? Interesting answer. Not apology. Not permission. Possession. You drilled into our drywall. It's a couple anchors, Tori. Relax. Relax. Interesting honestly. Because people benefiting from crossed boundaries always describe reactions as the real problem. I hung up without arguing. Then spent 45 minutes documenting everything. Photos. Timestamps. Inventory list on a yellow legal pad. Item. Condition. Approximate value. 3 pages total. Interesting thing about Army training. You stop relying on verbal trust very quickly. That night, I opened my banking app. Scrolled to the automatic transfer. $400 every month to my father for help. Property taxes. Megan's wedding expenses. Unexpected bills. Interesting honestly. Because somehow family emergencies always traveled financially in one direction. 30 months. $12,000 total. No thank you texts. No acknowledgement. Just automatic withdrawal and expectation. I pressed cancel. Effective immediately. Then I waited. 11 days. That's how long it took them to notice the money stopped. Mom called first. Tori honey. Pause. Your father checked the account. The transfer didn't come through. Interesting honestly. Because she didn't ask if something was wrong. Only where the money went. I stopped it. Silence. Huge silence. The kind where someone rapidly recalculates strategy emotionally. You can't do that. Interesting sentence. Like my paycheck belonged to family management instead of me. Dad makes $62,000 a year. The house is paid off. He doesn't need my $400. That's not the point. There it was. The real truth. Need had nothing to do with it. Access did. Family helps family. I laughed softly before I could stop myself. Interesting honestly. Because manipulative family slogans sound ridiculous once you stop participating emotionally. Family shows up, Mom. Silence again. Then the pivot arrived exactly like always. Smooth. Practiced. After everything we've done for you. Interesting thing about emotionally indebted families. They count childhood necessities as lifelong leverage. What specifically did you do for me? Pause. That you didn't also do for Megan? No answer. Because the answer itself was the problem. 10 minutes later. Dad called. Voice already angry. What's this about you cutting off the money? I stopped the transfer. That's $400 a month, Tori. Your sister's wedding is in 2 months. Interesting, honestly. Because apparently my adult income existed as a line item inside Megan's wedding budget now. Megan's wedding isn't my responsibility. Family steps up. There it was again. The Barrett family motto. Translated loosely. Tori sacrifices. Everyone else receives. You didn't step up for my graduation. 5 seconds of silence. I counted them. Then the line disconnected. Not resolution. Retreat. Interesting thing about controlling men. They hang up once conversations stop following their script. Jake looked up from the couch afterward. That go well? About how I expected. He nodded once and returned to his book. No lecture. No forced comfort. Just quiet presence. Honestly? That kind of support still confused me sometimes. Because Jake never treated love like a negotiation. 3 weeks later. Saturday morning. My father texted me the message that finally shattered everything permanently. Tori. I need $8,000 for your sister's wedding. Venue deposit due Friday. Send it to my account. Interesting, honestly. Not. Could you help? Not. Would you consider it? Just. I need. Send it. Like he was instructing an employee. I showed Jake the phone silently. He removed his glasses slowly. He cannot be serious. He's serious. I opened Instagram afterward. Megan's latest post. Mirror selfie inside a bridal boutique. Huge cathedral train wedding dress. Tagged the designer. I clicked the boutique link. Dress price. $4,200. Interesting, honestly. Because people spending luxury money always become extremely generous with other people's finances. I walked into the bathroom. Turned on the shower. Stood under hot water for 12 straight minutes. Not crying. Calculating. 12,000 in auto transfers. 3,500 paying off Megan's credit cards. $0 toward my education. 0 family members at graduation. And now $8,000 demanded like tribute. When I came back into the kitchen, Jake had poured fresh coffee already. What do you want to do? That question mattered. Because controlling families train you to explain yourself constantly. Jake simply asked what I wanted. I sat down slowly. In the last 2.5 years. Pause. I've given my family $15,500. Jake leaned back quietly. And nobody has ever asked Megan to contribute anything. Then I looked at my phone. Opened Venmo. Typed in my father's name. Amount. $8. Memo line. Best wishes. Interesting, honestly. Because sometimes tiny acts expose giant truths. My thumb hovered over the send button for 10 seconds. Jake watched silently from across the table. No interference. No warning. Just trust. Then I pressed send. Confirmation screen flashed immediately. $8 sent to Ray Barrett. Best wishes. 47 minutes later? The war officially started. The first missed call came at 9:14 a.m. Then another. Then another. Interesting thing about entitled people. They panic immediately once access disappears. Mom texted first. Call your father immediately. Not. Are you okay? Not. Was this a mistake? Just command language. Then Megan. 7 words. Are you serious right now, Tori? Interesting, honestly. Because nobody in my family questioned the $8,000 demand. Only my refusal. I turned my phone on silent. Placed it inside the kitchen drawer beside dead batteries and takeout menus. Then Jake and I ate breakfast. Scrambled eggs. Toast. Orange juice. Normal morning. Somewhere across town. My family was spiraling emotionally over $8 while I folded laundry. And honestly, it was the calmest I had felt in years. By evening, 11 missed calls. 6 texts. And 1 voicemail from my father. You have 1 week to fix this. Pause. Or forget you have a father. Interesting threat. Because emotionally manipulative parents always mistake fear for loyalty. The family group chat exploded that night. Megan posted the Venmo screenshot first. No caption needed. Just the image. $8. Best wishes. Aunt Gloria responded immediately. That's cruel, Tori. Uncle Frank next. He asked nicely. Interesting revisionist history, honestly. Because send it to my account suddenly became polite once the family narrative required it. My mother joined after that. I raised you better than this. Raised me better. Interesting phrase from a woman who skipped army graduation for wedding dress shopping. The messages kept coming. Selfish. Ungrateful. Cold-hearted. Family destroyer. 14 messages in 20 minutes. Not one person mentioned my graduation. Not one person questioned the $8,000 request. Then Uncle Frank sent the message that changed everything structurally. Ray still has the key to her house. Pause. Maybe he should go talk to her in person. I stared at the screen for several seconds. Interesting, honestly. Because suddenly, the family dynamic stopped feeling emotional. It started feeling unsafe. My father had a key. My uncle suggested using it without permission. And nobody in the group chat objected. I looked over at Jake sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. Held out my screen silently. He read the message once. Jaw tightening immediately. We need to change the locks. Tonight. He was already grabbing his jacket before I finished speaking. Interesting thing about healthy love. It protects first and debates later. 30 minutes later. Jake returned from Home Depot carrying new deadbolts, keypad locks, and garage door equipment. We started with the front door. Porch light glowing. Cool October air. Jake kneeling with a screwdriver while I handed him tools from the kitchen drawer. And honestly, watching him replace those locks felt strangely emotional. Because for the first time in my life, someone was helping me build boundaries instead of explaining why I shouldn't need them. While Jake worked, I went into the garage. Cataloged every item my father left behind. Fishing rods. Tool chest. Mini fridge. Tackle box. Cardboard boxes. Every photo timestamped. Every item documented. Interesting thing about army training. You stop relying on verbal agreements very quickly. Then Jake found something hidden inside the tool chest. A key. Fresh cut brass. Copy of the spare key. Hidden beneath a shop rag. Interesting, honestly. Because my father didn't just keep access to my house. He created backup access secretly. I held the copied key in my palm for a second. Cold metal. Tiny object. Huge meaning. Jake watched my face carefully. You okay? No. Pause. But I think I'm finally awake. I dropped the key into the trash. That should have been the end of it. But honestly, the garage wasn't what finally broke me emotionally. The group chat did. Later that night, I started scrolling backward through older family messages. I don't know why. Maybe I needed proof. Maybe I needed context. Maybe part of me still hoped I misunderstood everything. Then I found the conversation from 4 months earlier. The week I announced my enlistment. Megan had written, "If Tori goes to basic training, who's helping with my wedding?" Mom replied instantly, "Don't worry. She'll still send money." Then Dad. 6 words. Typed at 11:47 p.m. "That girl has been our backup plan since she got her first job at 16. Backup plan. Interesting thing about hidden family roles. Sometimes they're written down casually because everyone assumes you'll never see them. I read the message 3 times. Then kept scrolling. Older conversations. More patterns. Megan needs help. Tori can figure it out. Don't worry, she's always fine. Interesting, honestly. Because I was only fine because nobody ever gave me permission not to be. I sat alone in the dark garage reading messages I was never meant to see. The new keypad lock glowing green beside me. And suddenly, my entire childhood rearranged itself into clarity. I was never forgotten accidentally. I was managed strategically. Strong enough to survive. Reliable enough to fund everyone else. Emotionally trained to mistake neglect for maturity. The backup plan. I cried for exactly 5 minutes. Then stopped. Interesting thing about grief. Eventually it transforms into precision. When I walked back into the kitchen, Jake looked up immediately. I slid the screenshots across the table silently. He read every message slowly. Didn't interrupt. Didn't defend them. Just absorbed it. Then finally, "They planned your role years ago." I nodded. Apparently. Jake reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. Warm. Steady. No speeches. No fake optimism. Just presence. And honestly, that quiet hand on mine healed more than any apology from my parents ever could. I stared at the screenshots one final time. Then whispered the sentence that finally changed my life permanently. "I'm done understanding." My father tried breaking back into my house 4 days later. Interesting thing about control. People addicted to it rarely believe boundaries apply to them personally. I came home from work Tuesday afternoon. Jake already sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. Didn't say anything at first. Just turned the screen toward me. Ring doorbell footage. Timestamp. 2:17 p.m. My father's truck pulling into the driveway. Him walking directly to the garage keypad. Punching in the old code. Wrong. Trying again. Wrong. Third attempt. Wrong. Interesting, honestly. Because entitlement always assumes persistence should override permission eventually. Then he walked to the front door. Inserted the old key. Turned it hard. Nothing. The deadbolt held. He stepped backward slowly. Staring at the door like it had betrayed him personally. Then he kicked the garage door. One hard strike near the bottom panel. The camera captured everything. Timestamped. Documented. Interesting thing about military training. You stop relying on memory once evidence becomes available. My father stood in the driveway for 20 straight minutes afterward. Just standing there. Like a man realizing access had finally ended. 20 minutes later. My phone buzzed. Open the door, Tori. This is ridiculous. I just want my stuff. Interesting revision, honestly. Because suddenly the man who copied my house key secretly wanted to sound reasonable. I replied calmly. You were already given pickup instructions. Call first. Daylight hours. We'll be home. Then Dad sent the sentence that officially ended everything emotionally. I don't need permission to enter my daughter's house. There it was. The real belief underneath 30 years of family dynamics. Not respect. Ownership. It's not your house, Dad. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. No response. That silence mattered. Because deep down, I think he finally realized the version of me trained to surrender automatically no longer existed. The next day, Mom showed up at Fort Scott Army Base visitor parking lot. Couldn't get past security without authorization. Interesting, honestly. Because for the first time in her life, institutional rules applied to Diane Barrett, too. I walked outside in uniform. She stood beside her Camry with folded arms and red eyes. Your father can't sleep. He barely eats. You're tearing this family apart. Interesting accusation. Because manipulative families always blame the person who stops absorbing damage. He skipped my graduation. Mom winced slightly. Not enough for guilt. Just enough for discomfort. That's not fair. Megan needed us that weekend. I stared at her for several seconds. Interesting, honestly. Because she drove 45 minutes to guilt me in a parking lot. But never drove 4 hours to watch me graduate. I needed you too. Silence. Then came the warning disguised as concern. If you don't give your father the money. Pause. He's going to take this personally. Interesting thing about emotionally controlling households. Everyone learns to manage the father's reactions instead of questioning his behavior. He can take it however he wants. The answer is still no. Mom stared at me a long time after that. Then left without another word. No hug. No apology. No congratulations for military service. Just retreat. Day 7 arrived. Pickup deadline expired. No phone call. No arranged collection. Nothing. I sent one final message that morning. The 7-day window has expired. Remaining items will be donated after Sunday. Dad replied almost immediately. That's theft. Interesting, honestly. Because people who ignore boundaries always discover legal language once consequences arrive. Saturday morning. 9:15 a.m. Doorbell rang. I opened the front door. Dad stood there in work boots and flannel. Mom waiting in the truck outside. I want my stuff. Come through the front. We'll walk you to the garage. He stiffened immediately. I'm not being escorted through my own daughter's house like a criminal. Interesting sentence. Because again. Ownership. It's not your house. Pause. And we're being present. We walked him to the garage together. Everything organized neatly. Fishing rods wrapped carefully. Tool chest cleaned. Mini fridge unplugged and defrosted. Every item labeled. Military precision. Dad stopped in the doorway. Actually stunned. Interesting, honestly. Because he expected emotional chaos. Garbage bags. Broken items. A screaming match. Instead, he found structure. Documentation. Control. He opened the tool chest first. Reached underneath the drawer liner automatically. Looking for the copied key. Jake spoke quietly behind him. We found it. Pause. We disposed of it. Dad's face changed instantly. Not rage first. Fear. Tiny flash. Then anger rushed in afterward to cover it. You think you're smart? You changed the locks. You cut off the money. You sent your mother away crying. I waited silently. Because honestly, I'd finally learned something powerful. People reveal themselves fully when you stop interrupting them. I raised you, Tori. I fed you. I put a roof over your head. And this. Pause. Is what I get? $8 and a deadbolt? Interesting thing about transactional parents. They recite childhood necessities like invoices. You didn't come to my graduation. Dad waved one hand dismissively. It was basic training. Not a real graduation. There it was. The sentence that finally removed every remaining ounce of guilt permanently. Not real. 10 weeks. Gas chambers. Rifle qualifications. Georgia heat. Military ceremony. Still not real enough to matter emotionally. Jake stepped forward slightly then. Calm voice. Controlled. With respect, sir. Your daughter served her country. That graduation was real. Dad pointed toward Jake immediately. This is between me and my daughter. I stepped between them before Jake could answer. Not aggressively. Just deliberately. Jake is my family. Pause. He showed up. Silence. Huge silence. And honestly? That sentence hit my father harder than the locks ever did. Because for the first time, someone else occupied the emotional role he believed automatically belonged to him. Dad loaded the final box into the truck afterward without another word. No goodbye. No apology. Just retreat. The truck disappeared down Elm Street slowly. And suddenly, the house felt unbelievably quiet. Not empty. Safe. 3 days later, my father called the police on me. Interesting, honestly. Because controlling people escalate to authority the moment emotional leverage stops working. The accusation. Theft. Illegal lockout. Stolen property. 2 officers arrived at our house Tuesday afternoon. Jake already had the documentation folder waiting on the kitchen table. Text messages. Photos. Doorbell footage. Itemized inventory. Property deed. Every single page organized chronologically. Officer Davis reviewed the paperwork silently for several minutes. Then finally looked up. Ma'am. Pause. This appears to be a civil matter. Across the street. Dad sat in his truck watching through the windshield. Then came the final confrontation. Front door opening. Dad storming inside. Demanding theft charges. Demanding authority. Demanding obedience. And honestly? He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. Like a man realizing fear had been mistaken for love his entire life. You changed the locks on me. Officer Davis answered before I could. She's legally allowed to secure her property, sir. Dad turned toward me one last time. After everything I did for you. Interesting, honestly. Because people who demand gratitude rarely mention the damage attached to it. I looked directly at him. Steady voice. You skipped my graduation. You demanded $8,000. You copied my house key secretly. You tried entering my home after I changed the locks. Pause. Yeah, Dad. I finally understand now. Silence. Huge silence. Then Dad walked out. Truck tires screeching against asphalt. Gone. Officer Davis handed our paperwork back afterward. For what it's worth. Pause. You handled this professionally. After they left, I walked into the kitchen. Opened the drawer beside the stove. Inside the cabinet, a small brass hook still remained. The place where Dad's spare key hung for 2 years. Interesting thing about healing. Sometimes it begins with removing tiny things that no longer deserve space in your home. I unscrewed the hook carefully. Dropped it into the trash. Tiny metallic sound against coffee grounds. And honestly, that sound felt more peaceful than any apology my family could have given me. 3 weeks later, I donated the rest of Dad's belongings to Goodwill. He never sued. Never came back. Never apologized either. Just silence. But for the first time in my life, silence no longer felt lonely. It felt free.